Hey there, Shakers, and welcome back to another episode of Worth Your Salt, the podcast that's here to supercharge your marketing in the health and wellness space. I'm Jennifer Oraqua, a StoryBrand certified guide, and over the past 2 decades, my team and I have tested, iterated, and learned what works in marketing so you don't have to. Now I'm here to apply the marketing systems that truly work. At Salt Marketing, we're all about helping health and wellness practitioners like you build trust, authority, and a nonstop flow of clients. So if you're ready to take your marketing to the next level, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. If you felt overwhelmed by your business and unsure how to scale, EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, might be the solution. Designed to bring clarity, structure, and focus, EOS helps business owners move from firefighting to forward planning. So whether you're struggling with team issues, low profit, or hitting a growth ceiling, EOS provides simple, actionable tools to align your vision and create sustainable growth. For health and wellness practitioners at a certain level, EOS can offer a way to streamline operations, manage teams more effectively, and focus on delivering excellent care while scaling your practice. Today's guest on Worth Your Salt is Marc Cotone, someone who knows these challenges well. As a serial entrepreneur and multi-franchise owner, Marc turned to EOS to help scale his own businesses. After experiencing its impact, he became an EOS Implementer to help other business owners do the same. With a background as a CPA and a passion for entrepreneurship, Marc now dedicates his time to helping entrepreneurs get what they want out of their businesses through the power of the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Marc, I'm thrilled to talk with you today. You and I have had so many incredible conversations about what you do. I can't wait to hear your insight. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So Marc, let's kick things off with your story. How did you go from being a CPA to becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I moved down from Boston about 10 years ago. I was a CPA and I came to Charleston looking for no more tax departments, no more offices. I wanted a fresh start and I wanted to sort of explore my entrepreneurial passions. And so soon after moving down to Charleston, I quickly found franchising and the idea of a business in a box and being able to open up a business and be able to follow their system and be successful and follow our proven plan. And so very quickly, soon after moving to Charleston, we opened up 3 Eggs Up Grill franchises in the Somerville market. And my entrepreneurial journey took off from there.
When you first encountered EOS, I know you've shared with me that you had some struggles in that franchising opportunity. What core principles stood out as being particularly beneficial for a service-based industry like restaurants? What aspects of EOS appealed to you at that point?
The simplicity of following a system and being able to plug into the 6 key components of your business, whether it's vision, people, data, issues, process, or the traction component, the simplicity of EOS and the idea of being able to take a handful of proven common tools that have been around for 100 years and will be around for 1,000 more, and to be able to leverage those tools in order to get what I want from my business and to solve the challenges that were keeping me up at night, that really attracted me big time.
So were there any specific challenges where you were like, this is exactly what we need to streamline and scale, where you looked at EOS and said, this is the solution?
Absolutely. We were working really hard every single day. Our restaurants were doing really well. We had just gotten through or maybe halfway through COVID. And we were throwing a lot of spaghetti against the wall. We had our foot on the pedal at all times, but we had no plan. We had no destination. And so a couple of things that kept me up at night was, are we doing the right things? Do we have the right people? Are we moving in the right direction? And that I couldn't answer that confidently because we had our foot on the pedal, but we really had no rudder to our ship. And so the idea of being able to align our team around a common vision, around a simple set of principles of core values, I knew that would make our business so much stronger and would allow us to be a more focused, strategic business rather than just a hardworking, aimless business.
Yeah. And I think so many of us as entrepreneurs in service-based industries, we know exactly what you're talking about. When you talk about that flailing that's happening, when you've got your foot on the gas pedal and you're like, I don't know if we're going the right direction or not. So what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in your businesses since you started adopting EOS? How's it transformed your approach to growth?
Our businesses are night and day from when we implemented EOS. Like I said, we were successful, but we were kind of successful in spite of ourselves. So there's a few big changes that I saw almost overnight when we decided to implement EOS. The first is our meeting cadence. Even though we were constantly emailing each other, texting each other, the leadership team, the managers, we were in constant communication. We rarely ever met and truly sat down and worked on the business rather than in the business. We were just always in the weeds and never really solving issues. We were just firefighting day in and day out. And when we were introduced to the level 10 meeting, which is the standard EOS meeting pulse that we use on a weekly basis with our leadership teams, when we started to connect the circles together and get our leadership teams together, get our managers together, we were able to think strategically, make changes, make improvements, and really take the business to the next level rather than letting it drag us from place to place.
Brilliant.
And then the other piece is the scorecard. Even though I'm a CPA by trade, I'm embarrassed to say, and I know I'm not alone in this, is that when going and working really hard, and it's really easy to lose sight of the important details. And so even though I have a CPA background, I wasn't looking at my numbers as much as I wanted to, or as much as I should have. I didn't know my numbers as well as I should have. And we weren't really focusing on them. As long as the bank account had money in it at the end of the month, we were happy. But that's not enough. And that's not good enough for most businesses. And if you sort of turn a blind eye to your numbers, you're destined to get results that you don't want. And so when we implemented EOS, we introduced the concept of a weekly scorecard. And that weekly scorecard allowed us to look at our 5 to 15 key metrics and that give us an absolute pulse on our business. And when we started looking at those numbers on a weekly basis, they started improving. And that was exciting, so much so that year over year, we've seen 100% increases in profit, all because we were just paying attention more, focused, planning, predicting better, and just staying together, well-oiled leadership team. And that made a real big difference in our businesses.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, Marc, we've got to take a quick sponsorship break right now. But when we return, I want to get into the specifics of the EOS process and how it works. Stay with us. Let's talk about getting the most out of your marketing dollars. Maybe you're spending time and money on your practice's marketing, but it's really hard to know if every dollar is making an impact. That's why I've put together a tip sheet with 10 actionable steps to help you get the most bang for your buck when it comes to marketing your wellness practice. Whether your goal is to attract more clients, increase revenue, or boost the reach of your latest offering, these tips are designed to stretch your budget and make every dollar work twice as hard. You'll learn how to define clear goals so you know exactly what you're aiming for, get to the heart of who your audience really is, and find the highest impact channels to reach them. Plus, I'll share some of my favorite free and low-cost marketing tools to help you create content that resonates without breaking the bank. And that's just the start. You'll find advice on optimizing your website, leveraging organic reach before diving into paid ads, tracking the metrics that actually matter, and nurturing those all-important client relationships. If you're ready to make sure every marketing dollar is driving real results, head over to saltmarketing.co/results and grab your free tip sheet. It's time to feel confident that your marketing efforts are working as hard as you do. That's saltmarketing.co/results. Download it today and start scaling your practice the smart way. We're back here on the Worth Your Salt podcast with EOS Implementer Marc Cotone. And so, Marc, let's dive into this process. What are the first steps you take to make sure that someone is right for EOS?
EOS has what we call the proven process, and we follow that proven process with all of our clients. My businesses included followed that process when we hired our implementer that we worked with. So every time there's a potential business that might be interested in EOS, we start with a quick 15-minute conversation. We call it a VTA call, Vision, Traction, and Healthy, and kind of go over the high level principles of EOS and talk about how we can help. Mm-hmm. And if we decide that it's a great fit from there, we move on and we schedule a 90-minute meeting. And that 90-minute meeting or EOS overview is really for me to get in front of business owners and their leadership teams. It's most important that we get everyone together, all the decision makers together in a room, and go through the process where they learn a little bit about me, I learn a little bit about them, and then I introduce the EOS tools and the process. From there, the companies have a big decision to make. They decide that if they're ready to make a change, if they're ready to improve their business, if they're ready to get uncomfortable and are ready to take on EOS, then we move on and we plug right into that proven process. And that process is that we get together for 3 full day meetings over the course of 60 days. It's a spaced learning so that we get together, learn a little bit, build some tools, implement those tools in our business, and then come back 30 days later. We do 3 days, we do a focus day and then 2 vision building days. And from there, they have all the tools in place and they're ready to roll it out to their organization.
But I'm wondering, is there a key milestone? Is there something that you aim for early on to let these business owners know that they're on the right track now?
Absolutely. So 60 days in, we get together those 3 times that I talked about for those days. And from there, we want to have 5 foundational tools in place. First, we want to have an accountability chart, that not an org chart, an accountability chart that allows a company and everyone involved to see the structure of the business. Secondly, we have rocks. We have 90-day goals that we're using to keep us focused throughout the particular quarter. Third is a great meeting pulse. We talk about that level 10 meeting. Next is a great scorecard, making sure we have great KPIs. And then finally, that big milestone is what we call our 2-page planning document, is the Vision Traction Organizer. Mm-hmm. And that VTO, as we call it, the Vision Traction Organizer, is our 2-page planning document. And that tells us where we are, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. And in that VTO, we answer 8 questions. We make sure that the company knows what their core values are, what their core focus is, what their 10-year target is, their BHAG, their big, hairy, audacious goal, where they're going. We get into the marketing strategy, a 3-year picture, a 1-year plan, quarterly rocks, and a great issues list. And so when we answer those 8 questions and have that VTO, that's a great milestone to aim for and gives us a really tangible plan to follow and guide us in our actions in the business, because most organizations rarely write things down. So mm-hmm. we get that written down, and they have that plan from here until eternity to work on their business.
Yeah, it's a lot. Even for somebody like me who's read Traction, who is familiar with EOS, that is a lot to digest. So I'm wondering, there have got to be hurdles implementing a new system. I mean, obviously the system is set, but there's got to be roadblocks. There's got to be things. What are some of the common challenges that businesses face during the implementation phase? How can you help them overcome those?
Change is hard. Change is hard for people, no matter what age you are, gender, race. It is very difficult to change, and it's just human nature. And so implementing an operating system is as big a change as you can possibly imagine. So one of the big hurdles is getting buy-in across the team. So there might be an entrepreneur or a manager, business owner that is struggling or frustrated, but the team might not know it. And so, and the team might not be aware, or they might not care about those struggles because they're there just to work their job, earn their money and go home. And so anytime there's change, it breeds fear. And so there's fear of accountability, fear of new responsibilities, and people are busy. People are very, very busy, regardless of the state of your business. There's a never ending list of to-dos and projects and problems and chaos. And the idea of adding something else onto their plate is something that's overwhelming. People who aren't aligned with the mission of an organization don't really like it when you shine a light on them. That can create a little bit of conflict. So we overcome it by going through each tool thoroughly, making sure that we have a complete understanding and alignment across the team. And we build a lot of the tools, all these tools, we build them together. The leadership team builds those tools together. And that's the most important thing, because if the implementation is all kind of quote unquote boss talk or kind of pushed down onto you, there's less ownership that you have with those tools and that vision. And so if the leadership team gets together and builds that vision together, they have much more ownership and they're less resistant to change. So we're just trying to fight human nature. We're trying to fight old habits and just introduce some new habits that the business will be so much better for.
And on the flip side of that, I would love to hear a success story. Is there one that you can share where EOS made a significant difference for a business, or an example of where it solved maybe a major pain point like staff management or client retention or growth?
For sure. I have a client in the government services space, and they implemented EOS in their business last year. And when I met them, they were really frustrated because they had a high functioning team. They were really smart, but the team wasn't as healthy as they would have liked, and they weren't winning new contracts. And so we got to work together, and we built out their tools, and we went through the kickoff process, and we got into their quarterly cadence and did their quarterly meetings, and we're just growing. And as a team, and this past summer during their annual meeting, they did their core focus, and core focus is one of those 8 questions, and determined that the core focus is our purpose, cause, or passion combined with our niche. And they decided that they were spreading themselves a little bit too thin. They were focusing on too many different areas inside the government. And so they said, we're going to go all in. We're going to focus on what we're really passionate about, what we're really good at, and what sets us apart. And by the end of the summer, just a few short months later, they had a major win that resulted in 100% increase in revenues and 100% increases in profit.
Wow.
All because they used their core focus to align their effort and energy towards a common goal. And the success that they got in return was almost immediate. It was an amazing story.
Very nice. Well, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the origins of EOS and traction, basically around what kind of misconceptions do you come across about EOS? How do you address misunderstandings and make sure that people are really understanding? Because I know a lot of people try and DIY it. They'll read traction and try and, get in there and do this themselves. So what sorts of things do you find do people misunderstand?
Yeah, there's a handful of sort of misconceptions out there. And the first is that when people hear operating system, entrepreneurial operating system, they think that it's a technology or a piece of software. And so one of the first hurdles that I have to get over in explaining that it's not just technology that you plug in and answer a few questions and call it a day. It's a human energy operating system. When we implement EOS, we're directing human energy in a common direction towards common goals, and sometimes difficult to understand. Another one is that EOS is just another management trend or a fad because there's so many different influencers out there and different ways of doing business, different methods, different programs to follow. And we just address this by pointing to the facts that EOS has been around for almost 20 years now. The book Traction by Gino Wickman is in every single Barnes & Noble bookstore around the world. And there's tens of thousands of businesses that have followed the EOS process, and that it's really built on timeless principles and proven tools, and not anything that made up or out of the top of Gino's head. Even when he wrote the book almost 20 years ago, he leveraged Michael Gerber and Jim Collins, Good to Great, and E-Myth, and a lot of concepts that have been around for a long time and aren't going to change anytime soon. So the beauty of EOS is that it's not just here for a minute and we'll be on to the next thing later. It's really something that has been around for a long time and will be around for a long time because it's so simplistic and logical. It just makes a lot of sense. And even though it's not a light lift to implement, the concepts are just so simple and they make sense that it's really hard to argue with. And the last one is that EOS is for big companies and those with big budgets. That was a hurdle that I had to go over myself too, because when I read Traction, I Googled, how much does it cost to implement EOS? Because the proverbial light bulb went off in my head. I knew very quickly that this was what we needed in order to be successful. We didn't need Marc's ideas anymore. We could plug into the system, leverage it, and be really successful. So I Googled, how much does it cost? And it said anywhere from $14.99 to $50,000. And I thought that was a funny answer to that question, because the book is $14.99 and everything that we do is in that book. There are no extra secrets. We do have extra resources as implementers and a peer group of really smart people that help us. But a lot of the principles out there it's right there. They're in the book. But EOS is really, it's not designed for large companies with big budgets. Yes, it is an investment to hire an EOS implementer, but EOS is designed for entrepreneurial companies. It's designed for companies with 10 to 250 employees that have leaders that are frustrated, but more afraid of the status quo than they are of change, and who are willing to be open, honest, and vulnerable. And so there are small companies, there are solopreneurs that run on EOS, and there are hospital systems that run on EOS. So any sort of illusion that it's for another day or for a different size business or a different level, that is just simply not true. EOS can be leveraged by anyone in any type of business, and that's what's really exciting about it, and that's what I love about it the most.
So, reflecting on your career, what EOS implementation strategies, and I'm also thinking back here to what you said about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. What implementation strategies have been crucial in helping service businesses like restaurants or health and wellness scale and thrive based on EOS?
EOS is all about aligning vision and goals across diverse teams. And so the strategy really is diving in and really committing, because we say every single time we meet a new potential client, we say that EOS isn't an opportunity to dabble. You really need to make a long-term commitment. And so the idea of, number one, getting comfortable being uncomfortable is number one, because if you want to change, if you want to get better, you need to do hard things. And sometimes doing hard things it's not fun. It involves making tough decisions, difficult decisions, people decisions, process decisions, product decisions, and getting aligned on where you want to go, where you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there is really where the magic happens. So getting that alignment, getting that commitment from your team, and making sure that you don't keep it a secret. You talk about it and you get it out into your organization proudly, because that is, if it's just held at the leadership team level, if it's just held at the top and shelved, it can only do so good. But if you really take the time to get that buy-in, to explain the process, to share the literature, to share the books, to share the resources and the tools, you can really get a lot out of this, and you can really use EOS to scale. You have to go all in on it. You have to really commit to those tools and the processes and really dig in on it, because it's an investment of time and effort and energy, and you want to make sure that it's well spent, and you really have to go all in order to do that.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard it said about entrepreneurship that knowing the answers got you to where you are, but knowing the questions will get you where you want to be. I love that.
I love that.
All right, Marc, it's time for another quick break. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Worth Your Salt podcast, and today I'm talking with EOS Implementer Marc Cotone about how a true operating system can be what your practice needs to succeed. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to join us over on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and let us know how you're systematizing your approach to scaling your practice. We're back here on Worth Your Salt. And so before the break, Marc, you and I were talking about the tactical implementation of EOS. But now I want to get a little more strategic in nature and talk about how EOS can help everyone rely on a framework, even as our industry, that of health and wellness, and the market is changing constantly. So how do you see EOS meeting the unique challenges of service-based businesses like the health and wellness industry? Are there any unique aspects of EOS that might be useful for this sector?
So health and wellness businesses are often experiencing rapid growth, and with changing consumer trends, health and wellness businesses have to be ready always be predicting what the next trend is and where consumers are going. And so EOS, one of the original 5 leadership abilities that we teach in our first day together, is the concept of predicting. And so we predict on a weekly and every 90 days. We predict every week, every 7 days, and every 90 days. And we predict what we think we can get done, how much we can get done. And we leverage tools that we call rocks. And rocks are 90-day goals, and then also a well-defined scorecard. And wellness companies can manage the growth by using the rocks to focus on the key priorities that are affecting them during that particular quarter. And then also in tracking key metrics that are really important, because you have to see those trends. You have to see them before they affect your bank account or your tax return. So we use those scorecards to see the issues before they become real issues. And the outcome is that teams stay aligned and proactive, ensuring sustainable scale without sacrificing quality, because it really is an industry that's based on quality. If you don't deliver a great service, if you're not meeting the needs of your customers, then there's a million others out there behind you. So we need to be able to say that we are offering the highest quality products and services that we can, so that we can keep our customers happy.
Absolutely. And so on that note, for those who are considering EOS for the first time, what would be your top piece of advice to help them get started on the right foot?
The best advice I can give is, number one, to steal from Stephen Covey, is to begin with the end in mind. So know what you want to get out of the process before you get started, because if you go in blindly with just seeing what happens, then chances are you a few years later, you won't be any further than you are right now if you're not focused and you don't have specific goals. So having specific goals and then like we talked about earlier, making that commitment to make the needed changes, because most teams and businesses choose to implement EOS because they're frustrated because of one thing or another. They're not getting what they want from their business. They're working really hard, not getting enough profit. They're having people problems. They're having service problems. And so they come frustrated, and EOS comes along to give these companies, these frustrated entrepreneurs, a system to be able to solve those difficult challenges and to make those issues go away. And so sometimes in order to affect big change, difficult decisions are required, as we said. And so my advice is to really trust the process and be willing to make those tough decisions so that you can get to that ultimate goal.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you were talking just a minute ago about sort of how volatile and how fickle this industry really is. So how can we stay adaptable and resilient while we're implementing EOS? Are there pitfalls that we need to avoid?
One of my favorite quotes to share with my clients is that EOS is a framework and not a straitjacket. So even though EOS, the book Traction, can read like a textbook at times, and sometimes I've heard feedback over the years that, oh, it's too rigid, it's too strict, but really every business is unique and has different needs. And so EOS does bring a lot of structure and a lot of tools, but they all can be modified for each unique business. And so having a flexible and open mindset across the leadership team, it helps to ensure that those pitfalls are avoided, so that you can constantly be changing with the business environment and don't get too laser focused, don't get tunnel vision, so that you can pivot quickly. And that's why the whole EOS talks about the 90-day world. And so we don't do things beyond 90 days. And even though we have big goals, we have 3-year goals, we have 1-year goals, but our predicting is every 90 days. So even the most successful, even the tightest knit leadership team, after 90 days, they tend to fray a little bit. So coming up for air, seeing where you are, seeing where the trends are, seeing what needs to be changed every 90 days is a really healthy, sustainable cadence to allow you to stay on top and adaptable and resilient.
That makes perfect sense. As we wrap up, I really want to talk a little bit about mindset. Is there a way to best prepare ourselves in order to maximize the impact of the system? How do we set up our practices for sustainable growth, the way we approach this?
Yeah, I think the one of the most important things to keep in mind is that when you choose to implement EOS, it's really a journey and not a quick fix or a Band-Aid. So it's human nature to try to fix a problem really quick and sweep it under the rug and on to the next thing. But it really is a journey. A typical EOS client, we say it takes about 18 to 24 months in order to really be firing on all cylinders. So patience and being willing to go for that journey, I think, is really, really important. And focusing on sort of moving the needle a little bit at a time, 1% better every day will allow you to build that momentum and achieve the sustainable growth that you want.
And I love that keeping that 18 to 24 month timeline in mind. It just gives you sort of a perspective on what this is going to take. And honestly, as entrepreneurs, those 2 years are going to pass either way. So do you want to be where you are right now, or do you want to be where you could be if you implemented this?
Exactly. Time flies.
Exactly. So if we want to know more about you, about EOS, how to get started, where should we go?
My brand new website is www.marccotone.com. And that is, you can schedule a meeting with me and learn about everything that we do.
Perfect. And of course, a link to Marc's website and everything we've talked about today, including the book Traction, will be over on our website at saltmarketing.co. But right now, Marc, it is time for our lightning round questions. These are a few quick questions that I like to ask of every guest. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. First question is, what's something about you that often surprises people?
The fact that I'm a serial franchisee. I am a raging serial franchisee, and I can't help myself. And so while I'm an EOS implementer by day, we also have a handful of franchise businesses. We have 3 Eggs Up Grill franchises. We own a Dogtopia doggy daycare. We own the Bomb Bar, a smoothie bar in West Ashley, and then coming to Nexon. And then finally, we have a Garage Experts epoxy floor franchise as well. So we love franchises, and all those franchises keep us very, very busy, and we love it.
And I love that about you. It makes you a great conversationalist at parties. So what's your favorite thing about the work that you do with EOS?
I just love working with other teams, working with leadership teams that, especially in the restaurant, hospitality, service-based, family business, in doing what I do, I get to see a lot of interesting things. And one of my favorite phrases is that it's very difficult to read the label from inside the jar. Mm-hmm. And so I get to sit outside of the jar and read the label and help companies, help teams grow and get better. And so I've been lucky enough to be able to work with some really great teams. Sometimes I felt like I should be paying them to be in the room. They're so successful, but it's a really neat and gratifying thing that even though they're a super successful business that well known around Charleston and beyond, and the fact that I'm able to help them with EOS and help them conquer some of their challenges is really exciting, and really, I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, I bet it's fun to watch that light bulb go on every time that happens.
I love it.
All right, next question. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
The best piece of advice I've personally ever been given was from my dad. And growing up, he was a machinist. He worked really, really hard, and he oftentimes would be at work before I woke up. He'd be coming home after I was already in bed. And so he always said, don't work for anyone else. He knew that I was an independent thinker and that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Mm-hmm. He probably knew that I would be a difficult person mm-hmm. to employ, and he was exactly right. Yeah. And so even though I lost my way a little bit by becoming an accountant from the start, I eventually mm-hmm. got on the right track and where I wanted to be, and mm-hmm. and I eventually found my way to entrepreneurship. But
clearly, good advice. It just took you a minute to take it, right?
Better late than never.
All right, last question. Who is inspiring you right now? What podcasts are you listening to, or what's the best book you've read recently? I know you're an avid reader.
All this year, I've been obsessed with Donald Miller, and I talk about him with all of my clients just because even though he's a business thinker, kind of very similar to Gino Wickman, mm-hmm. but the concept of story brand and business made simple. I've listened to all of his podcasts. There are so many nuggets out there and so many interesting, quick 20, 30-minute interviews that I get so much out of. And that story brand system is the system that I really ascribe to for that story brand framework for marketing. So anyone I can talk mm-hmm. to about story brand, I love it. And I'm obsessed with Donald Miller.
Yeah. And I am too, as a story brand certified guide.
Of course.
That makes my heart go pitter pat. I'm headed to the Made Simple Summit next week. So I can't wait for that.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of Worth Your Salt.
Thank you for having me.
I also want to thank you, Salt Nation. If you have a great success story, I'd love to talk with you and share your story with our audience. So tell us about why you're worth your salt by emailing us at grow@saltmarketing.co. Of course, be sure to subscribe to Worth Your Salt so you never miss an episode. Finally, leave us a review or give the show a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's all for this episode of Worth Your Salt. Be sure to join me again next time. In the meantime, let's get out there and shake things up.